welcome to another video from Change Tips and Tools. And it's me, Phil, the Brummie that hails from Birmingham, England. And I'm here today with another Power Query video. And today I'm going to give you 3 examples of a running total or a cumulative total. The first will be a basic running total that will keep going on a forecast and an actuals value. The second will be a running total, but it will reset each new month. And the third will be a running total that resets based on the new year. And at the end, I'm going to give you some bonus content where I'm going to show you how to visualize this data in a pivot chart. So without further ado, let's do this. Now I've created this Excel file here with an Excel table, and there is a link to this file in the description that you can download that Excel file so you can follow along. So please do. And in that table we've got dates, we've got forecast numbers, and we've got actual numbers here. And what we want to do is create a running total of our forecasts and a running total of our actuals. So the first thing we've got to do is get it into Power Query. So I'm going to select anywhere in the table, and on the data ribbon I'm going to do from table and range, and that'll pull it into Power Query. Now you can see the dates, it's got dates and time. So I'm just going to, with that still selected, I'm just going to change on the home ribbon, I'm going to change it from date and time on the data type to just date. I'm going to replace current. Now remember, Power Query doesn't change your source data. I'm just changing the current step that we're on here and replacing it with this type where it made the change types. Yeah. So I've done that. So the first thing we've got to do with a running total is that we've got to sort things into a sequence. So I'm going to sort my date column. So I'm going to do the drop down and sort ascending. And then I need an index column, and I'm going to use that index column to reference how many rows I want to include in my running total. So I'm going to do add column. I'm going to use this index column function and do from 1. So there's my index column. So what I want to do is, let's focus on the forecast column for a second. Is I want Power Query to take the first row and sum it. Then take the first 2 rows on the row 2 and sum those together, and then take on the third row, take the first 3 rows and sum it, and so on to get my running total. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to use the list first n function when we add a custom column, and that needs 2 arguments. It needs a list to refer to, and then it needs to know how many rows, and we're going to use the index column to tell it how many rows. But first we need to create that list. So again, on the add column, I'm going to do custom column, and let's name this forecast RT for running total. So I like to break my formulas down, and I like to show you step by step what they're doing, or as much as I can anyway. So I'm going to do a hash, and I want to create a table first within this table, a table within a table. So I'm going to do hash open quotation mark, and I'm going to bring the data as of this step. So this step here, added index, I'm going to do that. So I'm going to type in there, between those 2 quotation marks, added index. Let's click OK and see what that does. So now you see I've got a table created against each of the row, and if I click to the right here, you'll see down here a preview of what's in that table, in this table. It's literally a copy of the query. So it's a table within a table, as you can see, and that exists on each row. So now let's turn this table into a list. So I'm going to click the cog on added custom, and at the end of here, after the closed quotation mark, I'm going to do an open square bracket, and then I'm going to select forecast and then click OK. And now we've got a list. So again, if I click to the right of that, you'll see a preview of that list down here. So that's the first part of the first n function solved. So let me click the cog here, and I'm just going to do a return in front of the hash, and I'm going to do list F, and there's that first n, list first n. I'm going to choose that and do an open bracket. So remember, the first part of the argument is the list, which we just created. The second part is how many rows to include, which we're going to take from the index. So on row 1, it will take the first row, row 2 will take the first 2 rows, and so on. So I double click on index and then close the bracket, and let's see what that does for us. So now when we look at the list, I've now only got the first row, second row, I've got the two rows, third row, 3 rows, and so on. Yeah. So there we go. So all I've got to do now is sum those totals up to get my running total. And the way we do that is we're going to use the list sum function. So again, I'm going to click the cog. Let's go in front of the list first n function. Then I'm going to do return and go back up. I'm going to start typing list S for sum. There it is. Select it. There's no arguments for the list sum function. So I'll go open bracket. I'm going to do return and then close the bracket on the list sum function and click OK. And there we go. We've now got a running total of our forecast. So then what I'm going to do is just here, I'm just going to expand this because I don't want it to be an NE. I want it to be a whole number. And the way that I'm going to do it is on the fourth argument of this table add column here step, I'm going to do comma. I'm going to start typing int. I want int 64 type, which is a whole number. I'm going to click the tick. And there you go. It's now a whole number. So now all I've got to do is replicate this, and the way that I'm going to do that for the actuals column. So I'm going to click the cog again. I'm going to take this formula. I'm going to do control copy. Let's cancel that. Let's add another custom column. Let's call this actuals RT for running total. Let's paste that formula in. Control V. And all I'm going to do is replace this forecast here with actual. So I'm just going to go to the right there, that's the last square bracket, delete it, do an open square bracket, and then just select actuals like so and click OK. And again, on that fourth argument there, I'm just going to do comma int 64 type, click the tick, and I've now got my running total. So what I'm going to do is I don't need the index column now, so I'm going to, let's rename these actually so I know what they are. So I'm going to rename it. It's always good to rename your steps so you know what they mean. So let's call that forecast. Oh, can't type. RT, return. Let's rename this one. Call that actuals RT. And then I'm going to click the index column, right click on it and just remove it. And it's removed. And there you go. And all I'm going to do now is on the home ribbon, I'm going to do it. Let's rename this to be, because it's automatically defaulted to the Excel table. So let's call this cumulative totals. Cumulative totals, sorry. And then hit return. And then I'm going to do close and load. So I'm going to load it physically so you can see what it's done. So there's my cumulative totals. And there we go. So we've got our date, forecast, actuals, and then a running total for forecast and a running total for our actuals. Brilliant. So that's the first one. What if we want to get this to restart when it hits a new month? So when it gets to Feb, for example, here, it restarts the cumulative, the running total. Yeah. So it goes 40. So how do you do that? Well, we won't use the first n function. We need to use the table select rows function. Let me show you what I mean. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this query. I'm going to right click on it and do duplicate. And I'm going to get rid of all those steps that we just created there in this duplication. Yeah. And let's call this monthly. So I want this to reset every new month. Yeah. So again, the first step is I want to get into a sequence. So I'm going to sort the date by ascending. like so. The next thing, so I can differentiate between the months, but I need something static, is I'm going to do add column, but this time I'm not going to use an index. I'm going to use the date here, so I can create something from the date. And what I'm going to do is do the drop down, select month, and I'm going to select the start of each month. So I'm going to start month. So now I've got the 1st of January for January, 1st of Feb for Feb, and so on. So now I've got that start of month, and you can see where it's saying inserted start of month. And now let's add my custom column again. So I'm going to, on the add column, I'm going to do custom column. And again, let's focus on the forecast. So I'm going to call this forecast monthly RT, running total. Again, let's just create the table first. We're not going to create a list this time. So I'm going to do hash, open quotation marks. So the last step in this instance here before, it's going to be inserted start of month. So let's type that in there. So inserted start of month as it appears. So as it appears there, look there, I'll do OK. So I've now got my table. And again, I click to the right, you'll see there's my table where it's got all that data in. So we're going to use table select rows. So I'm going to do the cog. Again, I'm going to do a return there, new line, and go back up to top and start typing table and S for select rows. So the first part of the argument is the table itself. I then want to refer to the next part in the conditions that I'm going to do is I want to compare this inner table to the table. And the way that I do that is I need to declare it. So I'm going to declare it by doing open bracket, and I'm going to call it inner T. It's like declaring a variable, but I'm declaring it as a table. Close the bracket, then equals, and then forward facing chevron. So I've now declared my my variable here as a table, and then I'm going to start typing inner. So inner, and I want to compare the date to the date within this table. Yes, the date within this table to this date, and it has always got to be less than or equal to that date. So I'm going to do open square bracket and choose dates and do less than and equal to the date. So the inner table is going to be less than and equal to the date in this row. Yeah. So double click that. Then I'm going to close the bracket on it. Let's see what that does for us and do OK. So now if I click the table, there you go. It's only got that first row. And the next two rows, wonderful. But when I get to February, it just keeps going. So we need it to get to stop and reset. And this is where the start of the month comes in. So again, if I click the cog, what I'm going to do is here on the new row, I'm going to type the AND function. So I want to meet that condition and where the inner table date column again, yeah, is either greater than or equal to date. Yeah. No. Or even, get it right, not date, start of month. That's what I want. Yeah. Then if I click OK, what has that done? So again, works. It's adding them. As soon as we get to a new month, it starts again. So then all we've got to do now is tell it which part of that table we want to include, which is the forecasts. So at the end of that, do the open square bracket and choose forecasts. Let's click OK. So we now got a list. Perfect. And then all I've got to do is wrap in a list sum. So let's do that. So return to list, S for sum. There it is. Open bracket. Remember, there's no arguments for that. I'm going to do return again just for formatting and close the bracket and click OK. And now I've got a running total by month, and it resets at the start of each month. So again, I'm just going to turn this into a whole number. So again, the fourth argument of this table add column, I'm going to do comma, do int int 64 type, click the tick. Wonderful. Let's rename this step, rename, and let's call this forecast monthly running total, like so. Hit return. And I'm going to copy the formula in here. Just copy that. Do Control C. Cancel that. Let's add another custom column. This will be our actuals this time. Actuals monthly running total. And I'll do Control V, and let's just change this forecast here to actual. So again, just delete right back to the square bracket, do another open square bracket, and select actuals, and then click OK. And there's our running totals by month for our actuals. And again, just here at the end before the last close bracket, do comma, do int 64 type, change and click the tick, and there's a whole number. And now I don't need the start of month anymore, so I'm going to right click on that and do remove, and I'm going to go to the home ribbon and do close and load. And there we go. So you can look here, it's calculating, it's accumulating them, and then it resets on the forecast there, starts again by month. So we've done a basic running total, yeah, and we've done a monthly. So how do you do an annual one? Let me have a swig of water here. The throat is getting dry. So how do we do an annual one? So again, let's duplicate this again. I'm going to duplicate. Let's get rid of the steps that we've done there. Yeah, and let's call this annual. Yeah, cumulative annual. Hit return. So how do you do an annual? So it's going to be the same structure as before. We're going to use the table select rows function. It's just at the final argument, we're going to use something different here. So let's sort it. Again, it's going to be in a sequence. So ascending from the date column. So I've now got it all sorted ascending. Yeah. Yeah, I did that. All right, so it's all sorted ascending. And I don't need to add any more columns now. So I'm now going to create my table again. So I'm going to do add column, so a table within a table. So I'm going to do custom column, and let's call this our forecast annual RT for running total. So let's create a table again. So I'm going to do, and I'll do it from this sorted rows here, the data that comes out from here. So I'm going to do hash, open quotation mark, and type sorted rows. Yeah, and do OK. So there's my table again, so you can see it. Yeah, so there's a table within a table. So now let's do the table selected rows. So again, I'm just going to do a return and do table S for selected rows. So the first part of the argument is the table itself. I then want to put that into a variable again. So open bracket, and let's call this inner again, inner T for table, inner table. Close that bracket, equal sign, and then right facing chevron. So I'm then going to refer to that inner variable just created, and again we want the dates. So where the dates are less than or equal to dates in our table. Let's close that bracket and let's make sure that works. And there we go. So that's working correctly, right? But obviously, as we know, if I get to 2025, so I've got everything there, but still including everything, just keeps on building. So I want it to reset in 2025. So let's go back into this added custom. And let's just add another condition here. So I'm going to do a return, type the and function. And this time I'm going to use the date year function to pull the year from our inner table and compare it to the year of the date in our query. And they've got to match each other. Yeah. So the way that I'm going to do that is do date year, open bracket, do inner table, open square bracket, and take that dates. Yeah. I'm then going to close the bracket on that date year where it equals our date year, open bracket, and I want this dates column from my query, and then close the bracket on that, and let's just do OK. So now again, it's just building. So let's scroll down to end of 2024. So there's everything. If we go to 2025, it starts again. Brilliant, we've got it. So now let's say which column we want to pull it out and turn this into a list. So again, go back into the cog here, and I'm going to do an open. So at the end of this table, select rows. I'm going to do an open square bracket, and let's select forecast and click OK. I've now got the list. And again, let's wrap it in a list function, a list sum function. Yeah. So go back into the cog. Going just before the table select rows, do a return. And I'm going to type list sum, open bracket, and then after this forecast here, do a return and close the bracket on the list sum function and do OK. And wonderful. You can see now, and let's turn this into a whole number again. So the fourth argument, do comma, int 64 type, click the tick. That's now a whole number. And if we get down to here now, you can see there it is. And you can see how it's doing it. Includes everything. Yeah. But it restarts here. Boom. And it restarts. Yep. So let's do the same for the actual. So I'm just going to rename this step here. So let's rename it and call this forecast annual RT, hit return. I'm going to go into there, cog, let's copy this formula, cancel there and do add column on the add column here, custom column, and let's call this actuals annual R2 running total. Let's paste that formula in, Control V. And again, I'm just going to change this forecast here because we want to pull the forecast, we want to refer to the actuals column. So delete that, do the open square bracket, select actuals, and then click OK. And again, like I've done before, I'm just going to change it to a whole number, do comma int 64 type there, click the tick, and now I've got the whole number, and there we've got it. We've now got our actuals queue, and it restarts based on a new year. Let's do home, and let's do close and load. Now let me show you an example of what you can do with that. So let's use the cumulative annual. So, how is this useful? Well, you're quite often going to get asked to present what's your say sales data, what's your forecast, what are your actuals, and then what's the Q. And you'll be asked to display these in charts quite regularly. I guarantee you will. So let's take this table here. So I'm going to click anywhere within the table, and I'm going to do insert pivot table. So let's select a new sheet. So let's call this rename that as my pivot table tab, yeah, just so we know what it is. And then as far as this pivot table is concerned, I need to add some things to it, yeah. So I need to add the dates. So let's take the dates and drop it there. I don't need by quarters, so I'm just going to get rid of that. So I've got years, months, and dates. What I'm going to do in here is I'm just going to filter it on 2024 for now. Click OK. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to expand that. So expand entire field. So I've now got the months there also. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the forecast in, and I'm going to drop the actuals. Yeah. Then with this pivot table still selected, I'm going to do insert, and I'm going to insert a what they call a clustered column chart, like so. Let's make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to right click on these fields. I'm going to do hide all field buttons. I'm going to click the plus mark because I want this to be at the bottom of the legend. So I'm going to do plus mark, and on the legend options here, I'm just going to put it at the bottom, like so. Now on here, I'm just going to add some more. I'm going to add these now. So I'm going to drop the forecast annual, and I'm going to drop the actuals annual running total in. And then I'm going to right click and do change type on the chart. So I've right clicked on the chart, I'm going to do combo. And what I'm going to do is it's automatically recognised this. So I've got clustered column for the sum of forecast, clustered column for the sum of actuals, but I want a line for the forecast annual running total and a line for the sum of actuals. And I'm going to make these a secondary axis, yeah? And then you can see the preview there. I'm going to click OK. So now I have my chart. There's a problem with this. If you look, what's happening is it's saying here that my sum of forecast at the end of December 2024 was going to be on 46,917. Now we know that's not right. If I go to annual and look at the end of December 2024, you can see that my forecast is actually 12,126. What's going on? Well, the reason that's happening is it's summing it up. If I expand the next level and do on the month and do expand entire fields, you'll now notice if I go to the end, it's now displaying it right. So it's summing it up within the month, and we don't want it to do that. We want it to appear correctly, but we don't want to see all these dates here. So if I collapse, so right click on the month there, and I'm going to collapse entire field to bring it back. I need to stop it from summing it up within the month. And the way that I do that is because it's a cum, I'm going to select the forecast, do the drop down and do field value or value field settings. And I'm going to change it from a sum to a max and click OK. I'm then going to take the actuals. I'm going to change that from sum. So field value settings, change that from a sum to a max and click OK. And now I've got the correct values showing there. So let's add a slicer in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another sheet. Let's rename this as my chart. So let's name it as chart there, and so if I go on my pivot table, yeah, take this, do Control X to cut it, go to the chart tab, then do Control V. Let's put this here. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Yeah, I don't need that there anymore. And let's just go pivot table, select the pivot table. In pivot analysis, select the slicer. I'm going to select the years and do OK. And I'm just going to take that and do Control X. And again, to my chart page, and let's paste that in here. And let's change the format of the slicer to be, let's go with that one. I like that one. Let's change the design of this as well. Yeah, I like that. Let's get rid of that. We don't need that. So now I've got an interactive chart that's showing me the cums, and I can show if I do 24 and 25 together, you can see how the cums are the running totals, and then they drop and restart in the next year. And obviously the actuals for 2025 end in September, and so September, and they stay at the same because you've got no actuals there at that point in time. Now, I've got to be honest with you, this is where I was going to end the video. But I must admit, if my guys brought this to me, I wouldn't be happy. I'd want more. And specifically, it's around this running total on actuals. You can see that the last actuals I've got is in September, and then it just keeps a flat actuals. I would want this to visually end on September as far as my actuals, and then I'd want to look at what my estimate at completion would be. So that would be based on my actuals and then the remaining forecast, what am I predicting my estimate at completion would be at the end of the year. So the first thing we're going to solve here is let's get this to end when the last actual is recorded as far as that running total is concerned. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do data, ribbon, and I'm going to do queries and connections. I'm going to do edit, right click on this, cumulative annual, and edit it. So just do edit. And look at this small faux pas here. I didn't name this step here. So let me just right click on this and do rename. And that's my annual, no, it's my actual annual running total. Hit return. Let's open up this cog and look at the formula. So all this stays the same, but I don't want it. So if there's not a value in the actuals, so it's a null. So if I just cancel that and scroll down, so if we go to where, so there's September, that's my last actual there, then it goes null. So if I've got a null there, I want to have, I want this to be null here as well on my actuals running total. Yeah. So if I right click on that, I'm going to do an if statement. Now, an if statement is not exactly the same here in Power Query as it is in Excel. Or you don't do a bracket. So if open bracket, do your criteria, and then if that criteria is true, you do a comma and whatever happens for true, and then another comma, what happens for false. You don't do it like this. It's a little bit like VB in some respects. So if I do a new line here, I'm going to do if and space, so no open bracket. So if my actuals does not equal null, then in plain English, do this. Else, just leave it null, like so, and do OK. So let's have a look down now. So let's go down to, and there's start 1st October, null there, and it's null there. Brilliant. That's what I want it to do. You'll notice now it's lost that whole number formatting. So let's just do the drop down here. Scroll down. Okay, so let's just do a comma after else null and do int 64 type and do the tick. Brilliant. That's back. Let's close and load that. And then let's go to the chart. Now you'll notice it hasn't changed here. So let's just go to 2025. Yeah, and let's just do a refresh. And there you go. Perfect. That's what I wanted. So what I'm now going to do is I need to add that estimate at completion, don't I? So I'm going to right click on here and do edit again. And I now need to add an estimate at completion total. In other words, if I've got an actual, then I want to use the actual. But if I don't have an actual, then I want to use the forecast. So let's create a new column. So on add column, custom column. Let's call this EAC totals. And again, I'm going to use an if statement here. So I'm going to do if actuals does not, so if I do actuals does not equal null, then actuals. Yeah. else null. No, else forecast. So if it's not null, then use the actuals itself. But if it is null, use the forecast instead. So let's do OK. Let's just scroll down to 2025. So there's September. So I've got 102 actuals there, 102. And then in October, I've got null. So yes, it's used the forecast there. Perfect. And again, like I've done before, let's change this to a whole number. So do the drop down. And just after forecast, I'm going to do comma int 64 type and do the tick. Perfect. Right. So now I've done that, I now want to create my running total off this estimate to complete totals. Yeah. So the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to first of all name this. So let's rename it and call this my EAC totals and hit return. And that's the one I'm going to refer to. So I'm going to do add column, custom column again. So let's call this our estimate to complete annual running total. Yeah. So again, I'm going to refer to this step now. So I'm going to do hash open quotation mark and do EAC. And look what happens if I don't type this out perfectly to match that. It's error because it doesn't recognize that step. So again, if I open the cog up, let's just spell that correctly the way I've typed it there. Do OK, and now it's fine. And I've got the data there, and there's the estimate at completion totals. So let's now turn that into a running total. So same as before, do return table. Yeah. Select rows. Do an open bracket. The first argument is going to be a table. The second part is create our variable that holds the holds this inner table there. So I'm going to do open bracket, my creature of habit, and do inner T again. Close that bracket equals and then the right facing chevron. So I can now refer to that as inner. Let's take the open square bracket dates, so it's less than or equal to the dates within the query. And then I want to do another condition where I remember I need to make sure it's the same year. If it's not, then restart the running total. So we're going to use the date year function. Open bracket. I'm getting the year from the inner table date. Close the bracket. And it's got to equal the date year. I'm getting the year from the query dates. Yeah. Let's close the bracket on that, and let's close the bracket on select rows, and let's just do open square bracket, and we're going to pull out the EAC totals. Let's do OK. We've got a list. There are totals. Let's just scroll down and make sure it resets. So there's January. So let's take that one, and there you go. It starts again. Perfect. And all we're going to do is wrap it in the list sum function. So again, do return for a new line, do list sum, open bracket, do a new line, and do close the bracket on that list sum and do OK. And there are my totals. And again, as I did before, I'm just going to do a comma int 64 type, tick. Now a whole number, I'm going to get rid of this, I don't need it anymore, so I'm going to right click on it and do remove, and let's close and load that. Perfect. Now let's go to our pivot table. Yeah. Now you'll notice when I click in our pivot table, do field list, I can't see that new estimate completion running total. So I need to refresh this first. So if I refresh it, and now it's appeared, the estimate's complete annual running total. So if I drag that down to the bottom there, and again, like I did before, just set that to a max, not a sum. So field value settings, set it to max, and do OK. Let's then go to our chart, and that's reset itself. Just get rid of this, I don't need it there anymore. And I'm going to click on the chart, right click on it, and do change type, combo. So I want the forecast and the actuals to be clustered columns, but now I want this max forecast to be a line. I'm going to make it a line with markers and make it secondary axis, line with markers on the actuals. The actuals running total, secondary axis again, and make it a line with markers and a secondary axis again on the EAC. Running total and do OK. And boom, now we can see our running total. What you can see is I can't see the actuals, and then when the estimate to complete takes over. And the reason being is I just need to change the order here in the pivot table. So all I've got to do is just move this just above the actuals, and now you can see our estimate to complete. Next thing I want to do is these axes, I don't need them because I'm going to have data labels. So I'm going to select the secondary axis. I'm going to do Control 1. And on the labels, so what I'm not going to do is select that axis and do delete, because look what happens to this scale here. If I do delete, it messes the scale. So if I do Control Z to undo, so what I'm going to do is this selected, yeah, is the labels. I'm just going to say none. Same with this axis over here, labels, I'm going to say none. So now they've gone, but I've maintained the scale here. I now want to make these bar columns, these clustered column bars wider. And the way that I do that is I need to change the gap width. So I'm going to select one of those, and then I'm going to change the gap width to 50%. And boom, they are now wider. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, with this still selected, just the one, and I'm going to add, I'm not going to do add data labels to everything because I don't want that, because it will screw up when I refresh the data. It just doesn't work. So what I'm going to do is select each column, do add the data label for that column. I'm going to select it, shrink that down, and on my options here for my data label, I want it inside end. I'm going to set the font to white and make it bold. I'm going to select this column, and again I'm just going to add data labels. I'm going to select those data labels. I'm going to make that, let's put that over here on the inside end again, and I'm just going to make it bold so it's standing out. I'm then going to select the forecast running total. I'm going to do add the data labels to that as well. Strip that down. I'm going to select those data labels, and again here I'm just going to make it above, so it appears above. I'm going to change the font to be a sort of a lighter green and make it bold, and I might even make them a little bit bigger. That's fine, make it 11. And now I don't want to select the actuals, I want the estimate to complete, so I'm going to select this one only, not the actuals, because it's going to be the same at this point, but then I just want this to show as well. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to do data labels, shrink that down, just select that, and let's make that below. Let's make that a lighter blue. Let's make that bold. Let's make that 11 as well. So now I've got all the things I need on my chart. Let's select 2024. That's fine. So 2025. And that is where I'm going to end today's video. So I've covered lots there in this video on Power Query. First I showed you how to do a basic running total in Power Query. Then I showed you how to do a running total where it restarts at the start of each month. And then I did a running total where it restarts at the start of a new year. And then I gave you a bonus bit of content where I showed you how to visualize that data in a pivot chart. So I hope you found that informative. If so, please remember to click that like, subscribe, and smash that notifications button for future content. And as always, I wish you an absolutely wonderful day wherever you are in the world. Please take care, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video from Change, Tips and Tools. Bye bye now.